Hi, welcome to the Dove Recovery House for Women podcast. I am Wendy Noe, the Executive Director of Dove Recovery House and your host for the Dove House podcast. And I'm excited because today we have Lindsay Camplin, our Director of Clinical Services, joining us today. Just one thing to remind you, if you are loving this podcast, please make sure you subscribe and share with your friends and family. You can find us on all your podcast hosting sites. So again, make sure you subscribe and follow us and tell everyone about this great podcast. So again, Lindsay is here with us today. Hi, Lindsay. Good morning. So Lindsay, you're a clinical director here, our first ever clinical director, which is awesome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I was happy to join Dove House a little under a year ago. I was really excited about coming here to work alongside a team of people that I felt were really holistic in their perspective of working with women seeking recovery from substance use, and was really inspired by the agency's ability to work with people regardless of income status or their ability to pay. And I was also really excited about all the services that we offered here and the fact that women could stay here up to 2 years. I felt like that really aligned with my values, both personally and professionally. And I was happy to join. And so far, I feel it's been just a huge opportunity to be involved with such a great agency. So I think some of the values that brought me here were just my belief in the human capacity for resilience, how relationships can help shape behavior, how we can work together to heal one another in community, and how the women here, and honestly anyone seeking recovery, has just so many strengths they can draw upon to get to the point that they want to be, and that we get to witness and walk alongside that. So I think my values have really aligned so far with what Dove House is doing.
Yeah, so you had a very interesting starting time with Dove House. So as I mentioned, Lindsay's our first clinical director here at Dove, and we hired her right before COVID happened. And so what was it, your first month and a half, 2 months were remote?
They were, yes.
So learning the job via Zoom.
Right. At home.
Right.
It was a little odd, but we did it.
We did it, and we rallied. And I think in some ways, I mean, we have a pretty new team here, a lot of new people, some older people that have been here for a while, but I think in a lot of ways that really forced us to understand one another, listen better, work together as a really close group for the sake of our clients and their health and well-being. So you did a great job merging in. I have to say, and people that know me know that I was not always my best self during that time of COVID. Many people were at that time being forced to quarantine and still figure out how we're going to keep the lives of those that we care for safe and still do our job. So I'm glad you're still here with us.
I think you're right. I think as a team helped us to become closer ultimately, and still is, right? It's still a very active thing going on, and right. I think we do a good job of communicating through it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've talked a lot about this incredible team that we've built, and Dove House, when I started, looks a lot differently than it does now, and the changes that we've undergone and the new processes and the new positions that we've implemented are all due to the fact that we know that the women that come to Dove House deserve the best. And I think that we are definitely the best and well on our way to be even better and continuing to grow and to evolve. So you work in social work, you are a clinical social worker license, but you have an interesting background. Talk a little bit about some of your other attributes and skill set that you bring, which is great for Dove House.
Okay, sure. I originally went to school in undergrad for sociology and anthropology, which I think really helped me to develop a deeper sense of empathy for people and start to value this idea that all people have value and there's no right way to define what it means to be human, which I think attracted me to social work rather than psychology, so to speak. Not because there's anything wrong with psychology specifically, but that I was more drawn to how we interact with social groups and how understanding humans in the context of relationship to one another really spoke to me. So I earned my master's degree in social work, and during my first year of graduate school, I really felt like if I truly believed that the people with whom I worked were in their situations because of systemic issues rather than character deficits, that I wanted to be able to be better equipped to deal with policy and macro level needs. So I ended up going to law school and completing law school while also in my master's program. And while in law school, you're able to pick graduate certificates. I ended up focusing a lot of my time there on civil and human rights. So I was in school for both degrees at the same time, which was miserable.
I can't imagine.
But I ended up graduating with my master's in social work in 2015 and then ended up finishing law school in 2018. I ended up taking the bar exam and successfully finishing that as well. And honestly, I think I have still a little bit of an identity crisis as to where I'll use that or how that will manifest in my career. But I think, leave law school with a better sense of how I can play a role in policy and macro level change. And I think at heart, I'll probably be a social worker with a law degree rather than the other way around, but I wanted to have the option, and I really like school. So I ended up just really geeking out over all of that.
Yeah, but I think your law degree has already benefited Dove House. There's been times where we've asked you for your opinion. I mean, obviously your role here is not to be the Dove House attorney, but I think your understanding of the law, and even understanding the law in the sense that underserved individuals and individuals who've lived in poverty really have a difficult relationship with rights and legal rights and such. And so I think it's been really interesting to see how that's played out. And I think you're a lot like me in the sense that we think really big picture. And how is the work that we're doing today, how can we really advance our work and make a much broader sweep? So I don't think our eyes are down to the ground while we're doing the work every single day. We're thinking bigger, like, what more can I do? How else can I better serve my community so that the people that are suffering can rise above and be their best selves? And so I think it's fantastic. And I've certainly seen how you've applied your law degree, and I think it certainly can be a benefit to our women and staff and Dove House ultimately.
Well, thank you. I try to remind myself of that when I pay my student loan bill. And I wanted to mention that because I was working too while getting my master's degree. I don't really remember when I slept, but I did apparently because I'm still here. But I remember I worked with a family who had lost another family member to violence. And while I was working with them, they were getting evicted from their apartment, in large part because one of the family members' symptoms of how they managed the grief was getting in the way of managing the space of the apartment. So like a lot of hoarding. And I remember sitting with this family in court while they were facing eviction and thinking, this is so not okay. Like, there's got to be something to do here. And I remember once I got to law school learning about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how that family could have probably stayed in that apartment had they known or had someone to represent them in that fight. And so I want to mention that part of my inspiration to go to law school was the very real work I did as a social worker, where I would just see so many injustices and I would just be so outraged. And I would know that I couldn't represent that person and also be their social worker at the same time. And I still know that. But I think if I can have a stronger voice and be better equipped to say, no, that's not right, and here's why, and then even connect someone to the proper resource or be able to point them in the right direction, to me, that's enough, because it's just, there's stuff that would happen. It's like, gosh, this can't be right,
I've worked with people that have been in underserved populations my entire career, and navigating system resources is so completely overwhelming and daunting. And to have someone that can advocate for them, that understands the legality of things or the process, can make a huge difference. I worked in breast cancer for a long time, and we were working with women that didn't have health insurance or were underinsured and needed mammograms or treatment. And I remember when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and we went to the hospital. We thought she was having one appointment, and we're at the IU Simon Cancer Center. So it's massive in and of itself. And many people that are underserved or live in rural communities and don't have massive healthcare systems like this, but come here for the best care. So we're here, and she has her appointment, and then the doctor says, well, I need you to go here. And then we have to go find this new place for an exam or something. I remember we were there for 8 hours, from one appointment to another appointment to another appointment. And I kept thinking about, one, what if someone thought they were only taking an hour off work to come here and to get this appointment, and then they miss an entire day's of work? And for some, they may lose their jobs because of that. Right. Two, they don't know how to navigate the healthcare system. I, fortunately, was knowledgeable enough in the healthcare system, and especially in breast cancer and cancer in and of itself, that I knew a lot of the language that was being used. But I think it really opened my eyes up to how difficult it is for people with chronic diseases to manage their disease and then manage the treatment of it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do here at Dove House. We're managing chronic diseases, mm-hmm. and we're helping them, giving them the tools that they need to be successful. We're walking alongside them in that journey. Right. So I wanted you to come and talk today because we're always trying to change misconceptions around substance use disorder, mm-hmm. and helping people understand the chronic disease that it is. Mm-hmm. And we say we understand that something came before substance use disorder. What we see here at Dove House and many treatment providers see is that trauma is the underlying theme. Can you talk a little bit about that?
One of the first things we try to instill in the women here is that the substance use behavior started as an attempt at a solution. That really, it was their body or brain's way of managing something that felt really insurmountable, whether that be a combination of trauma, genetic predisposition, mental health concerns, family stress, or however it might have manifested for that person. Substance use disorder doesn't start because someone has a character problem or because someone isn't a good person. It starts because there's something going on outside or in the environment or even within that person that feels like it's unmanageable without some kind of other tool, so to speak. And when we think about trauma, we can define that in a lot of different ways. We can define that as things that happen in childhood as well as adulthood. And I want to say that trauma is subjective. So what's traumatic to me might not be traumatic to you. And it matters less defining specific events. And it matters more to think about how we can listen to the women when they tell us that something was traumatic for them and then validate that. So it can be a whole wide spectrum of events or a series of events or a lifestyle that someone might have been subjected to or felt trapped in. And there's a lot of neuroscience around this, right? So we know that the brain is set up to have systems in place that allow us to remain safe. Safety is the brain's top priority. And so the brain will do whatever it has to do to keep us safe. And one of the systems in place in the brain is the fight or flight system that's attached to adrenaline and cortisol and all the chemicals that allow us to act fast and to be able to make snap decisions. And that system is really meant to be our friend. It's supposed to help us get out of situations. But if growing up, when you come home, the situation that you live in and that you can't escape from is scary. So when you come home, the lion lives at home, so to speak. There's some kind of abuse going on or some kind of stressor going on. The brain can't escape the stressor in that situation. And so what ends up happening is the system that's supposed to be able to turn on and off appropriately and get us to safety and then relax is always on. So then the body is always flooded with stress chemicals and never returns to what we would call homeostasis or a baseline. And so this person's body gets used to constant states of adrenaline and stress. And we're not set up for that. So if our brains and bodies are flooded with constant chemicals of stress and we don't have any recourse for that, there's no place to go to return to safety, you can't maintain that. So at some point or another, the brain has to think of a way to escape or get out of that situation. And substance use is a great example of a way to live through a situation that you kind of can't get out of, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that for people who have survived significant adverse experiences in childhood, we think about the ACE study. We talk about physical abuse, living with a parent or caregiver who had serious mental illness or substance use disorder, sexual abuse, living in a situation where someone had to go to prison or your parents were divorced. Those are all examples of things that we know signify adverse experiences for people. And we know that the higher rate of adverse experiences in childhood predispose you to other health issues. So I want us to really try to drop this dichotomy that the brain and body are separate, because they're not. The brain is the body is the brain, and they have a mutual feeding relationship. And so if we bathe the brain, so to speak, in chemicals related to stress and survival, that inhibits someone's ability to use the brain for connection, because connection and social relationships is how we're ideally supposed to be able to live, right? In connection with one another and getting our needs met and feeling safe. If you've spent your entire life in survival mode, you didn't really have time to build connection mode. And so I think in really reading about substance use disorder, some people conceptualize it as what we would call an attachment disorder, which is that the opposite of addiction isn't abstinence, it's connection. So what feeds substance use disorder? Is it disconnection? Is it shame? Is it an attempt at a solution? And so I think at Dove House, as a clinical director, what my goal would be is to help the women connect to themselves, and maybe for the first time, and really try to come home to themselves as someone who has always had everything that it takes to be who they want to be. But maybe they've been fed messages, explicit or implicit, right? That they can't do it or shouldn't do it. That they've always had what it takes, and that we're here to help them unpack all of the messages that they've gotten that they don't, and that they are their answer, so to speak, and that the community is here to support them in that. So we want to help them connect to themselves, to us as a community, and we do that through building safe relationships and hopefully providing trauma-informed care that allows them to address some of the barriers to recovery. But I do think that we know that trauma and its effect on the body has a huge correlational relationship with later developing substance use disorder. And in all honesty, I think what is really tragic for me is if we think of it as an attempt at a solution, imagine how trapped it would feel that you have this attempt at a solution using something to feel safe or escape a situation or to manage something. And then that solution becomes another traumatic life experience.
Right.
How done do you think you're going to feel? Because then living in substance use becomes traumatic.
Well, it's completely overwhelming. How do you pull yourself out of such a deep, dark hole? Yeah, you think you're using this to manage the things that have happened to you prior, only to have even more traumatic experiences as a result of it.
Right. And so then how are we expecting people to go through all the adverse stuff they go through prior to that, survive a substance use disorder, and walk away without support with hope, right? I mean, it's amazing. The resiliency that the women here show, and anyone in recovery shows, is just, it's an honor to walk alongside them, because quite frankly, it's stacked against someone to seek help. Because if you think about the paradigm that you'd have of the world after substance use is another traumatic event, and now you've lost connection even more so. A lot of the women have lost contact with themselves, their families, what it means to be connected to society, employment, housing, and then to say, hey, I know this is hard, but part of the answer is to turn around and face this and try to come home to yourself. I mean, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a tall order. And what I love about Dove House is that we don't do that and say, good luck.
Yeah, right.
We say, we're going to be here right next to you. We're not going to do it for you, but we're going to be here next to you as you do that. And we're going to give you time to do that at a pace that is doable.
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, you can go to jail or you can go in detox and you can have the chemicals out of your body, but you haven't dealt with that horrific situation that's living inside you. And I think, again, to your point, the time that we give them, we're not asking for or giving them only a certain small amount of time, 3 weeks or whatever. Take the time that you need to get healthy. And for each person, it's independent from one another. For one, it may take longer. For another, it may take less time. But loving them through it and supporting them and believing in them and giving them that hope and changing the voices around them that have, as you've mentioned, told them they can't do that they're not worth it, that they have hurt everyone that they've loved and broken apart the family, and they isolate themselves. And so to know that they get to become their best selves, the women they've always meant to be, is truly a gift. And as you mentioned, it's an honor to walk alongside them in that journey and to see them really just become whole again.
Absolutely. And just the intergenerational component of it. We know that trauma flows through generations, and it affects our genetics. We know about the notion of epigenetics, that the stressors in our environment can flip on different genes and have them manifest differently. And so we think about how trauma affects us at our very biological chemical level. If we conceptualize the women here as breaking generational cycles for things that they might not have even lived through, but people before them have lived through. Mm-hmm. I mean, how powerful is that we get to witness people stopping cycles so that generations after them can hopefully start to rewrite a narrative of what it means to be a person for their circle. Because oftentimes the women here have grown up in an environment where someone else struggled with substance use disorder, and they grew up and now they're the adult who might not have gotten the support they needed as a kid. Mm-hmm. We get to witness the halting of intergenerational cycles of trauma here. And on the one hand, knowing what we could be up against and how challenging that can be. And on the other hand, knowing that it's absolutely possible is pretty inspiring.
Yeah, it is. And it makes the job that much better.
It does.
To know that we see great success here. Moms reunite with kids and stopping that level of trauma. And it's pretty awesome. I'm so glad to be a part of your team. That was awesome. I learned so much just listening to you. We need to do this more often. Clearly, I need to be educated.
Maybe we should do more podcasts.
Yes, I think we should. I know you were nervous, but you have a great understanding of the women that we're serving and the barriers that they are up against. I'm just honored that you're a part of our team. I think the people that listen to this will appreciate that and have a better, deeper understanding of what our women are going through. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I just want to say that for anyone listening to this, that regardless of what draws you to maybe a deeper understanding of substance use disorder or the women we serve, just know that your feelings and experiences about it are valid as well. And that here at Dove House, we try to invite honest and candid conversation about not only substance use disorder, but mental health, and that listeners should be considered part of the community as well.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, the Dove Recovery House podcast. If you want more information about Dove House and the work that we do, please visit our website, doverecoveryhouse.org. You can also find us on all social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.